Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we'll start this Horiot daf Hey. We are going to begin on Daled Amud Beis by the Mishnah, the one all the way at the bottom. It says the Masnisa. Her Beistin. So we have Beistin that paskind, and we've been discussing that they made a mistake in their psak. V'asu kol hakahal, and everyone followed suit, in which there's no question. And we then mentioned Ruban al pihen. Even if, let's say, it's a majority, the question is what constitutes a majority. We saw that in previous dafin. So Mavian par. According to this opinion, which is Rabbi, the only requirement of bringing a par helm davar shel tzibur falls on the Beis Din themselves. The Shvatim do not do so, but only one par by the Beis Din. And for that matter, Bavodas Kachavim, if let's say the Beis Din made a mistake regarding some din of Avodah Zarah, so then in that situation, they also are the ones that bring the carbon. Mavian par v'sa'ir. They bring a par just like in any situation of a par helm davar shel tzibur, but because we're dealing with Avodah Zarah, there's also a requirement of having to bring a he-goat. Okay, Divra Meir. But again, as the point of this whole mission is going to show, it's a machlokas, who is the one who's required to bring this par. Yehuda Omer, it's actually not the Beis Din, but rather it's the Shvatim themselves. So of course there's 12 tribes. So Yud Beis Shvatim Mevin Yud Beis Parim. And Rabos Kachavim Mevin Yud Beis Parim Uvishneim Aser Seirim. So this is an interesting sheet of Rabbi Huda that says no, it's not the Beis Din that brings the carbon, because they're not the ones that actually did the mistake, although they said the mistake, but they didn't actually do anything necessarily. So as we continue Hamid Aleph, Rav Shimon says an even more fascinating approach, as Rashi says, par l'chol shevet shevet upar l'Beis Din. So not that the Beis Din does it and not the Shvatim, not that the Shvatim do it and not the Beis Din, but both do. And that's what we're going to see here. Shimon Yud Gimel Parim B'Avodas Kachavim Shlosha Asa Parim Yud Gimel Seirim. Okay. Par b'Sa'ir l'chol shevet shevet. Par b'Sa'ir l'Beis Din. So the Mishnah just elaborates. Okay. Now the Mishnah says as follows: Her Beis Din, again Beis Din paskin. We said as long as there's a majority, so then that's enough that the din of a par helm davar shel tzibur comes into place. However, let's say it wasn't everyone. V'asu zayin shvatim. Let's say it was the majority of Klal Yisrael, 7 of the shvatim. Ruben al pihen. Let's say it wasn't 7 shvatim, but it was just the majority of like the popular vote, if you will, of people. The majority of the people actually sinned. So Mavian par. So they hold that also in that situation you have the same dinim, even though it wasn't everyone, but it was 7 shvatim. So therefore, again, the Beis Din brings the carbon, which is what Rameir held before. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Zayin shvatim shechatu, there were 7 that sinned. So therefore, Mevin Zayin parim, those 7 shvatim, not the ones that didn't sin. That wouldn't seem to be logical, right? But at least according to the Shita, and therefore only they bring the carbon. The Shar Shvatim Shluchatu. But interestingly enough, listen to this. This other 5 Shvatim didn't do anything wrong. Mavian al Yadehin par, which means each Shevet must bring even if they didn't sin, right? Shav Elu Shluchatu Mavian al Yadeh. So this is really an unbelievable line, which we're going to see is called Gereira, that even though they didn't do anything wrong, but since the majority of Klal Yisrael did something wrong, they also have to bring a carbon. Okay, could be din arvus, but nonetheless, this is what he holds. Says Rashi, Kaloimer par l'chol shevet shevet. V'yomer b'Gemara designed the Kamar Behuda lav dafka. Doesn't have to be 7. Dehu adin l'shevet echad. It's interesting, even if it's just one tribe, shechata al pi haras Beis Din hagadol shahashar shvatim shluchatu. The other 11 tribes mevin al yadehin par. Each one has to bring the par. So why they mentioned 7? The bigger chiddush of them, they just was 1. So it says Rashi, I did the kaimer amer zayin dihu boy ruba mamish So Rameir requires Roiv Mamish of 7. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't require rov mamish; he only requires one shevet. Then everyone would have to bring a carbon because of that one shevet, which is pretty unbelievable. Okay, Shimon Omer ches parim. So why ches? Again, one is he holds the Beis Din and the shvatim. So what happens is that the Beis Din has to bring, as well as the 7 shvatim that sin. It was kachavim ches parim v'ches irim. Par v'sir l'chol shevet shevet. Par v'sir l'Beis Din. Okay, but he doesn't mention anything about everyone else. Hara Beis Din shel echad. Let's say an individual Beis Din paskins, but it's shel echad. It's an individual tribe's court. It's not the Beis Din hagadol midash shvatim. He also hashevet al pihim, and only that shevet sinned. Also shevet hu chayev. Only that shevet is chayev. V'shar kol hashvatim paturin div Rabbi Yehuda. Now, what do you mean? I thought we just saw in Rashi that Rabbi Yehuda holds that if one shevet sins, that everyone has to bring a par. That's only if it's Beis Din hagadol. Over here, this is a Beis Din, a lower level court, if you will, which is of that shevet. So therefore, it's much more concentrated. That it's not only was it only one shevet that sinned, but it was from the psak of that shevet. So there, we don't say greira. We'll see why. Which sounds similar to what we just said. Shneimar, and we quote a pasuk, V'im kol das Yisrael yishku. It says, if all Klal Yisrael sin, v'lo yadas oiso shevet. Not in the case if it's from that shevet. When it says adas Yisrael, Rashi points out that's referring to the Sanhedrin. Koloimer Sanhedrin shel Yisrael dahainu Beis Din hagadol. It has to be the psak of the Beis Din hagadol. Okay, says the Gemara. Tanurban. Yadu shahoydai. Let's say that it was known that they paskin v'to and they made a mistake. Mahoroi, that which they paskin, says Rashi, kol mahor Beis Din shechel muter, but bittul mixas. So it turned out again initially that they decided that chalev, which of course is non-kosher fat, they thought it was kosher fats. And because of that, that's considered to be a bittul mixas. And then the kahal went and did this, and they ended up b'shagig eating chalev. So what ended up happening? So v'asu kahal pihem v'achul shagin chalev v'dam. So they ended up eating chalev and dam. The havi chad b'shkagas ma'isa bilvad v'chad b'hoira. So one was based on b'shagig because they didn't realize it was blood or whatever, and that was one mistake. But the other reason why they ate the chalev was because of the psak of the Beis Din. And then afterwards it turned out that they realized that it was improper. But they forgot what was the mistake. They knew they made a mistake, but they didn't remember that they paskin that dam was mutter, chalev was mutter. So yochli yuchayavin par dehavi hara malya. So now let's go back. Yadu shaharu, they knew that they made a mistake with to maharu, but they made a mistake, as Rashi explains, that they forgot what they didn't remember what they said. So the Beis Din needs to know what they decided, but if they don't remember what they said, then they're going to be put, as we're going to see here. Because Yachlu Yuchayavin, you would think the Beis Din would be chayiv to bring apart Talmud Lomer, but Naida Hacheto, that they have to be aware of the sin. V'lo shiyadu hachaitim asher chatu. Chatu shnei shvatim mevin shnei parim. So each tribe needs their own carbon. That's what we learn out from the word chatu. Okay, so actually let's slow down. Look in Rashi. The base needs to know what they paskened. And therefore, if they don't, then there's no part that's brought. And then the fact that it says chatu shnei shvatim mavin shnei parim, which basically means that each tribe has to bring their own par. Chatu shleisha mavin shleisha o mavin shleisha o einu oimer el chatu shnei yichidim mavin shnei parim. So let's go back into Rashi. So chatu shnei shvatim mavin beis parim. V'hu hadin techi chat shevet echad shemaybe par echad. So the fact that it says this tells you that if one brought one Shevet made a mistake, so one brings a par. But if there's two, then two Shvatim have to bring one par. The Chiddush is that two Shvatim can't say, let's just bring one par and we'll split it. And then Rashi says, L'chayv al kol kahal v'kahal, the Shevet echad ikri kahal can mafarish time will come on. We're going to, again, according to one opinion, the din is that even one Shevet that makes a mistake, there's still a chiv to have to bring a par. Okay. So let's go back. Chatu shloisha mavin shloisha. You bring three. So again, if three shvatim made a mistake, they bring three. Oh, eno oimer el chatu shnei yechidim. Two individuals mavin shnei parim. Chatu gil mavin gimel. If there's three, you bring three. Tamalomer hakahal kahal chayev v'chol kahal v'kahal chayev. So as we're going to see in a second what that means, but as we said, that every Shevet is going to be responsible to have to bring their own par. Ketzad chatu shnei shvatim mavin shnei parim. Chatu zayin mavin zayin. The shar shvatim shel chatu. The Chiddush here is that, as we saw before, that if seven sin, once it's only two, that's it. But if there was seven, so then already, of course, they have to bring a par. But the other shvatim that didn't sin, the other five, mavian al yidei par, they also have to bring. Sheafilu elu shel chatu mavian al yidei hachaitim l'chach nemer kahal l'chayv kol kahal v'kahal divrei Rabbi Yehuda. So again, Rabbi Yehuda has this unbelievable chiddush, if you will, this unbelievable shita, that even though you didn't sin, you still have to bring a param dav shel tzibur, because the majority, the seven of the shvatim did, so therefore you have to bring also. Okay. But apparently that's only, it sounds like, at least according to here, maybe that's only because it's rov. But if, let's say, one Shevet, so one Shevet brings their par, two Shvatim, each one has to bring a par. They can't split it, but maybe not that the other majority of the Shvatim have to bring a par. We'll elaborate on that. So we know that's not true, necessarily, according to all opinions. Let's see. Rav Shimon omer zayin shvatim shechatu. If seven shvatim sin, mavian zayin par, mabeis mavian el yedehen par. So the chiddush of Rav Shimon is, as we saw in the Mishnah on the very top, that not only does the Shevet have to bring a par, but the Beis Din also, as opposed to the other opinions that's either the Shevet or the Beis Din. According to Rav Shimon, both. Shenemar, because Shenemar lamata kahal v'nemar lamala kahal, because it says the word kahal in two different places, as Rashi quotes the actual sources. Ma kahal hamar lamala based in ima kahal, av kahal hamar lamata based in ima kahal. So therefore we say that just like over there, it's referring to they're included as part of the kahal, so too over here. And therefore, when there's a mentioning of having to bring a par, it means that both parties have to bring a par, the Beis Din and the Shevet. Rameir oimer zayin shvatim shechatu Beis Din mavian al yedehen par. So let's say you have seven shvatim. This is an interesting chiddush, that all you need to do is bring one par, the hen paturin, and then actually everyone else is patur. It's not necessary to bring that every Shevet has to bring a par, or that the Beis Din and the Shvatim have to bring a par. No. According to Rameir holds, as we saw before in our Mishnah, Rameir holds that it's the Beis Din's responsibility to bring the par. Just one, right? And that's what happens. That Beis Din mevian al yidei and par, and the Shvatim don't have to. Behead paturin. Nemer kahalamata v'nemer kahalamal. Ma kahalamal Beis Din v'loit tzibor. Av kahalamata Beis Din v'loit tzibor. So he does it the opposite way, to actually learn out that no, that the tzibor does not have to bring a par. It's only the Beis Din. Rav Shimon Lezer omer mishmoi chatu shisha shvatim. Let's say 6 tribes out of the 12 sin. However, behem rubo shel kahal. We had this before. O Zion, there's a majority of kahal mevian par. So we saw that maybe there's a machlokus over there when it comes to these two situations. But according to this opinion, if you have the majority of shvatim, or you have not necessarily a majority of the tribes, but that smaller amount of tribes, because they're so large, constitutes the majority of the general population, so you'd have to bring a par. Omer Mar. In other words, as we said, it needs to be that the Beis Din is aware of the sin, namely, that in the event that they, again, gave an erroneous psak, people violated it, they did two mistakes, they ate chalev and they ate dam, which are both violations of kares, and it turns out that they realized they made a mistake, Beis Din did, but they didn't remember which psak they did wrong, so then there's no par in that case. So Mantana, so Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Rav, Vitema maybe to Rava, Dulok Rabbi Eliezer. This cannot be like Rabbi Eliezer, did not, because Rabbi Eliezer, Manavshach. He says, either way you look at it, look in Rashi, did not Mavsectus Krisus. It's brought down over there. It says, on top Rashi, it says, Chaylev and Noiser, Lafanav. Let's say you have, again, 9 kosher fats, and Noiser, which is a carbon which was supposed to be burnt, was left over, and it's in front of you, you can't eat it. V'yachol es echad mehen. You ate one of them, you shouldn't have eaten either. However, you don't know which one. Rabbi Eliezer holds you have to bring a chatas, so you be paiter. But Tanya, Rabbi Eliezer, so why does Rabbi Eliezer say you have to have a chatas? Because it says mamanashach. Im chel chayiv. Im nasar chayiv. Either one you'd be chayiv on its own. So the suffix is, did I do this that I'd be chayiv to bring a carbon, or did I do this that I'd be chayiv to bring a carbon? So bring a carbon mamanashach. Amal Rabbi Yeshua, back in Rashi, so Rabbi Yeshua says, your patu says, Horiot Omer, Asher chata bo ad sheyada bo. Mashachata, you have to know what mistake was. So obviously he doesn't hold of that drasha. Hachinami svirli Rabbi Eliezer manavshach. Over here he would say the same thing apparently about haras Beis Din. Nim chaylev achol b'haras maviin par. V'im dam achol b'haras maviin par. V'chayav and mamanavshach. So he would apparently disagree with this svara that we just said before, based on this mamanavshach. So let's go back in the Gemara. Im chaylev achu chayev. You'd have to be, your chayev carbon chatas either way. Noiser achu chayev. Rabbi, so therefore it's not like him. So again, just like if a person would have eaten individually chaylev or noiser, so he would be chayev carbon chatas mamanavshach. So to over here, the Beis Din made a mistake, so they should have to bring a parhel dov shel tzibur mamanavshach. They made a mistake. It was either chaylev or dam. What's the difference? Either one, there would be a chiyuv to have to bring a par. Rav Ashi, no, I feel it Rabbi Eliezer. He can agree over here, and maybe it's different in that situation. Because Shani Hach is different over here. D'chsiv asher chatu oleha, on it. That means that you must know what it was. So, because it has this language, a stronger language, maybe when it comes to Beis Din, there is this requirement that they must know in order to have to bring a parallel doshel tzivor, so it's possible you can agree. Hasam nami, what do you mean? Over there also, haksiv asher chataba. It's by the carbon yachid of having to bring carbon chatas. It also says this strong language, and yet he holds that you still have to bring carbon chatas. Now, huma boile prat lemas asek. He already uses that word to teach us a different drasha, to exclude someone who's masasek, says Rashi. What does that mean? Mashma, the meschavin lasu zachet. You actually have to have intention to sin. Prat, l'masasek b'Shabbos. For example, as we've seen this in many places in Shas, sheneschavin l'hagbias hatolush. Your intention is to lift up something which is already detached from the ground, which is mutter, v'chata chasamachumer. Then it turned out that that which you took was attached and you ripped it off, which of course you're not allowed to do that. It can't be. It's a violation of talush, of uprooting or kaitzer. So the potter. Aval hamasasik b'chalavim v'arayis chayiv shekvar nehena k'deyamer perik dal misas. So it's interesting enough that even though masasik, a person is potter, however, you're going to be chayiv masasik when it comes to something like where there's elements of hana, like eating chaylev or being masasik ba'arayas, that you it was not mischaven. The Gemara discusses exactly what happened over there. Anyway, the point is that it's possible, again, that he could hold like this shita, that even though by carbon yachid he could say you have to bring carbon yachid mamanavshach, but over here you can't say mamanavshach because you have the pasuk asher chata oleho. Okay, fine. Let's go a little bit further. We already have a couple of questions, but let's go a little bit further. So, my time to Rabbi Yehuda. So, what is the reason why Rabbi Yehuda says in our Mishnah that the Shvatim bring it, not the Beis Din? Savar arba kahalik sivi. It says kahal 4 times in the psukim. Kahal hakahal, kahal hakahal. So the fact that it's a riboy, so that's like an extra time. So chad, one of the times is l'chayv kol kahal v'kahal. So one is to tell you that you're chayiv every single kahal is chayiv. Okay, that's one. V'chad l'hoira tuya bebeistin hu ma'isa tuya b'kahal. That the psak is from the beistin and the action is by the kahal. So we're looking at Rashi. V'chad lemida dishar shvatim shulchatu nigrorim acher hachatayin umaviyin al yidein par. So what it was saying, v'chad l'greira. So that's what it's saying, that you are required to bring a carbon even though you didn't sin. The majority of the people sinned, so you still have to bring the carbon anyway. V'chad l'shevet shios b'haras beistin. Even when it comes to one shevet, they also are mechuyev to have to bring, and they also have a chiyuv. And we say, well, that's not rov. Yeah, but according to him, shevet echad is ikri kahal, and therefore that's the reason why you still have to bring a carbon. So there's 4 different things. First of all, it's just pashid, that's the psak of the basin, and the action has to be the kahal. Now, it can't be that the basin paskins and only the basin does it. Right? It has to be that the kahal does it, or the kahal has to do it based on the psak. So that's one. Another one again is everyone is mechuyev, according to him, to have to bring the carbon, not the basin, right? And also Gereira, that even if you didn't sin, but everyone else did, so you also have to bring. And also a shevet themselves is mechuyev to have to bring, and even though it's not rov. Okay, Rav Shimon tlosa kahalik sivi. It actually says it 3 times. Hakahal kahal hakahal. Me'eni hakahal orchi dekrahu. Because one of the times, that's just the way the pasuk reads. So it's available. It's not a riboy for a riboy. K'diamri inshi me'eni deplanya. So that's just like the way people speak. So chad l'chayev. Therefore, one is l'chayev al kol kahal v'kahal. That I agree again. According to the shita of Rav Shimon, so he holds that not only is the kahal the shevet don't have to bring, but also the basin. So one of them, he says, is to say that every shevet has to bring. B'trei achrini nemer l'mata kahal v'nemer l'mal kahal ma kahal malahol basin ima kahal afkan basin ima kahal. So the first one is to tell you that every shevet has to bring. The second one is the basin also has to bring. B'ramer kahal, and that's it. So b'ramer kahal hakahal will darish. Hilkach, according to Rameir, he only learns out 2. Hilkach trei kahalik sivi miboyle lenemer mata kahal v'nemer mata kahal malahol basin v'lot tzibor afkan basin v'lot tzibor. So he learns it out to say that no, only the basin brings the pahar, but not the tzibor. Rabbi Shimon Eliezer, my time eksiv v'hoyim eni ho'eda alma miuta dechsiv me'ene. It says the eyes, so that's like a miyat, like some eyes, which is not a majority. Which sounds like the majority or everyone. So which one is it? Remember, deruba in mute the loy. That's mashma, only the majority. So haketzat, how do you understand this? So it means like this: also vav vehin ruba shel kahal o zayin mishen ruba shel kahal chayavin. So he learns out from this that even though, as we said before, that there's as long as you have a majority of shvatim, or even if you don't have a majority of shvatim, but that is the majority population, then you'd be chayiv. Okay, let's see a bunch of questions before we get too far ahead of ourselves. Question 9. Ma loimed Rabbi Yehuda midalid pahamim. Is that the first question? Yeah. What does Rabbi Yehuda learn? The fact that it says kahal 4 times. So again, as we said, one is that he holds that l'chayv kol kahal v'kahal, the savar shevet echad ikri kahal, that every shevet is obligated to bring a carbon. Also, to tell you that it has to be by the haros based in, and the maisa is totally b'kahal. Greira, that even if the other shvatim didn't sin, they still have to bring. And one shevet that violated, they still have to bring. Question That was question 9. Question 10. Rov kahal she'osu b'haris beistin mi mevi par helm davar. So all they want is the three-way machlokas of our Mishnah. Rabbi Meir holds that only the beistin, not the tzibur. Rabbi Yehuda holds the tzibur, not the beistin. Rabbi Shimon holds the tzibur and the beistin have to bring. Okay, TA 2. Shevet echad shasu al pi horas beistin hagadol. So the one shevet did. L'mandiam shevet ikr kahal mi mevi carbon v'kaber karbonis mevin b'sacha koil. Okay. So according to Yehuda, kol shvatim mevin carbon b'sacha kol shneim asar. Rav Shimon oiso shevet mevi par u beistin. This is a very difficult question, by the way. This is basically asking not that the simple element of our Mishnah of who brings it. Is it both the beistin and the kahal and the shevet, or a mixture? It's talking about only one shevet sinned, but by the beistin hagadol. So how many karbanos are brought? So according to Yehuda, he says that because shevet echad ikri kahal, so therefore all the shvatim need to bring a carbon, which will end up being 12. Okay, Rav Shimon, who generally holds, again, Rav Shimon holds that it's the beistin and the shevet, but he also holds that also shevet may be par, the beistin may be in par. The sacha kol shnei karbanos, because Rav Shimon holds that only that one shevet has to bring, but not the others. This is actually probably going to be something we'll see soon. I didn't really hit upon this yet. Okay. This is going to be the same question as TB4. These are not simple questions for not such easy Gemaras, but that's the exact same question. Okay. All right, so let's continue. Let's continue on Hamad Beis. Okay, so we're on the top of the Amud. So the Gemara says like this: Rav Shimon, Rav Meir, according to Rav Shimon and the Shita of Rav Meir of our Mishnah, the Horiot tuya bebeisdin, umasa tuya bekahal menolu. Says because we already mentioned that according to we asked the kasha that how does Rabbi Yehuda learn all of his dinim? So he says, because it says kahal 4 times, and one of the times it says kahal, according to Rabbi Yehuda, we said that the Horiot is tului bebeis and the Maisa tului bekahal, but they don't have the ability to make that drasha. So how do they know that din, which apparently no one argues with? So Rabbi, do you ever the pasuk says? Let's see the pasuk in its entirety. V'haya im eine ha'eda nesa b'shkaga, that they ended up sinning b'shogeg v'asu kol eda par. The entire eda brings a par. Par ben bakar echad l'ol as an ol offering. Reich nichach Hashem u'min chasai v'niskai kamishpat. Of course, they have to bring a mincha offering and a libation. Usir izim echad l'chatos. So there's also a seir izim that's brought as a chatos, but we're only focusing on the chiyuv of the par, which is an ol that's completely burnt up. So it says what happened. It says v'hoyim me'nei nesasa, that the people did something l'shkaga. So therefore, the fact that it says that language, it shows that the people are the ones that did the action. Okay. And which means only they did, but the Beis Din didn't. They gave the psak. Okay. Rav Omer milchol am b'shkaga. So he learns out from a different pasuk, milchol am b'shkaga. Okay. Utzricha dikas rachmana v'hayoyim me'enai ha'eda nesel shkaga. If you only had that pasuk, habamino I feel miyuta. Maybe even if we're dealing with a miyut, we'd also say that a par has to be brought. L'chol is going to tell you, no, it's only if it's rope or rukakulo. V'ksiv v'kasav l'chol ha'amishkaga havamino ad the avdi beistin bahadi ruba. You would think that the beistin also did it too. L'chachiksiv v'hayim me'eni ha'eda nesasol shkaga, that the that it was only the people, right? Only the people did it, not the beistin, right? So that's the drasha. It's not necessary for the beistin also to have done. So it's only the Eda. Okay. So Vaha Kiksiv Haini Kroi Babas Kachavim. This is not talking about Parim Doshel Sira. This has to do with the Avodah Zarah, which is why the pasuk which you said there's a Sir Izim. So Yalfina Me'ene Me'ene. So we say you're right, but we went out Gzer Shava. Okay. Okay. Horiot based in so again when it comes to by Avodah Zarah, there is the par in the sa'ir that needs to be brought in that mistake. There's an additional chiyuv of a sa'ir. Okay. All right. Horiot based in shel echad v'chul. So yiboilhu shevet echad Rabbi Yehuda. If you have one shevet, according to Rabbi Yehuda, and this is kind of like what we were just talking about before, right? You kind of the question that I already asked in TA2 and TB4. You kind of jumped the gun a little bit because this is impossible to know the answer until you get through this. So Yibohu Shevet Echad Rabbi Yehuda B'Haras based in Hagadol. If one Shevet that listens, not the row, but the one Shevet, Mi Maisi Shvar Shvatim Olo. Do the other Shvatim have to bring? Mi Amrinen Shiva Shvatim Huda Maisi. When 7 Shvatim bring Shar Shvatim B'Hadaihu, so the other Shvatim we say Greira that they also have to Misham de Igaruba because there's a majority of people that sinned. So Tashma Mahin Mavian. So what does this Shevet bring? Par Echad. Shimon Omer Shnei Parim, 2 Parim. Now what do you mean 2 Parim? Why would one Shevet have to bring 2 Parim? But Rav Shimon holds that as we said, that whenever there's a mistake, the Beis Din and the Shevet have to bring. So that's why it makes sense when he says Shnei Shvatim. So Ma'askinan, Shiva, if 7 Shvatim made a mistake, so then Rav Shimon Tamni boy, you'd have to bring 8, 7 for the Shvatim and 1 for the Beis Din. El Dechata Shevet Echad. It must be, we're talking about a case where only one Shevet sinned, which means the Shevet themselves, according to Rav Shimon, have to bring, but only them, but no one else. We don't say Greira when it comes to one Shevet that sinned. Therefore, you only have to bring, there's only 2 that are brought, one by the base and one by that one Shevet, which is mashma, when Rabbi Yehuda says that Mavian par echad, we'll have to understand what that means. So, b'mai, Baharas based in, if its own Shevet's, its own Shevet's mistake, it's the courts of that Shevet that made the mistake. So Rav Shimon doesn't hold of that. What does that mean? So let's look at Rashi. Dehalo mieter le kahal haras beis dinoi. Because Shimon doesn't have an extra pasuk for that. Okay. Ella la b'haras beis in hagadol. We're talking about haras beis in hagadol, that it has to be the haras beis in hagadol. The Tanakama money. Ine Rameir haruba boy. Rameir holds you need a rove. Ella la Rabbi Yehuda. When we mention the Tanakama statement, it must be Rabbi Yehuda. So what do we see? You don't need to bring more parim. So we see, as Rashi says, Alma Ulumaisi Shar Shvatim B'Hadayu. We actually see that according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's not necessary. You do not have to bring extra karbonis. The other Shvatim, we don't say Greira. So Amrino Hachmai Skin Kikan Shechatu Shisha Shvatim. There was actually 6 Shvatim in Reuben Shel Kahal. In that situation, Rabbi Shimon ben Eliezer, he descended Rabbi Shimon ben Eliezer, Omer Mishmoi, Chata Shish v'Hem Reuben Shel Kahal, O Shiva Afal Pisha in Reuben Shel Kahal, Mavin Par. So it's talking about this one circumstance in which not everyone agrees with, but according to his one shita, that because there's the majority of the population, even though it's only 6 shvatim, that a par elam davar shel tzibur is brought even in that situation. So it's not necessarily, do we have to say that it's like the shita of Rabbi Yehuda. So there's no raya either way necessarily if one shevet sinned, whether or not all the other shvatim have to also bring according to him. Now clearly according to Rav Shimon, he does not hold greer in that case, but according to Rabbi Yehuda, we're not sure yet. Okay, so Rabbi Yehuda, so Tashma, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, and this is pretty clear. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Shevet Shas B'Haras based in Dino Oisa Shevet Chayev. That Shevet is Chayev. V'shar kol shvatim b'turin. However, all the other shvatim are pater, but that's only because the psak was from their shevet. However, Mahoras based on the gadol, afil shar shvatim chayavim shmamina. So there's the answer right there. That according to Rabbi Yehuda, no, if one shevet sinned, but it was based on the hara of based on hagadol, so the din is that every shevet has to bring, even though it's only one person, one shevet that made a mistake. There's a concept of greira, which is, it's an interesting idea. It's like you have this wooden boat and one person's making a hole in the boat and the other guy says on the other side, oh, it's not my problem. So we're all in the same boat. So even though one shevet made a mistake, nonetheless we all are held accountable for one another. So why do you have to add that, right? It must be that sometimes other shvatim are not pater, right? It's only because the psak came from their own courts. Hatana oisa hashevet chayiv, kivan the tana oisa hashevet chayiv, mameli yadana shar shvatim paturin, el hakamashmon. The haras base dinoi of that shevet who the shar shvatim paturin, which is mashma. You can make a clean diak of a haras based on a gadol and feel shar shvatim chayav and shemamina. So in fact, there's a clean proof that in fact that would be the din. Question 11. Rabbi Yehuda, Tisle the shar shvatim shlochatum avin begreira. Im gam b'shevet echad shechatim avin hashar begreira. So it's only by based on the gadol. Im also b'haras based in shar kol shvatim b'turin. Im also b'haras based in hagadol. It was from the base in the gadol, then even the other shvatim would be chayav to do it, which again is an unbelievable chiddush. Okay, Omer Rav Ashi again, but that's what again, hard question. Going back to TA2, shevet echad shasol al pi haras based in hagadol. So Lamad Yom Shevet, and again the key, you have to read the words cleanly. Based in hagadol. There's a reason why they wrote that in the question. Lamad Yom Shevet ikri kahal, which is of course Rabbi Yehuda, right? This is the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda. Mi maybe carbon. V'kama carbonis mavian b'sacha kol. Okay, so Rabbi Yehuda holds that shevet echad is mikri carbon, and therefore he would require that everyone has to bring a carbon, basically, right? And that's the idea. You know, is he right? Kol shvatim mavian carbon b'sacha kol shnei masar. Rav Shimon says that only that shevet brings, as well as the beis din, so which would be the sachakol too. Okay. Ravash. Okay, so we saw the masnisin dekanami shmamina iboyhu. So now we have another question. Shevet echad shias b'haras beis din hagadol. Okay, Rav Shimon. Now, according to Rav Shimon, who said in our Mishnah that it's necessary to have to bring the par, the beis din brings the par, as well as the shevet. So according to Rav Shimon, if you have shevet echad, right, mi maisi olo. This is really going back to our original question. Tashma, mahin mavin, when they bring par echad. Rav Shimon oimer shnei parim, only two. Now why two, right? So my skin shiva shnei parim shmoina parim boy. Obviously, we're not talking about a situation where there's 7 that sinned, because then you'd have to bring more. And why is there only 2? And beis din has to bring. It's obviously the chat is shevet echad. Only one shevet sinned. Ubamai ilim b'baharas beis dinoi. It's their courts or Shimon Leisley. He doesn't hold like that. As we said before, that if it's that shevet, then there's no requirement. Ela b'haras beis din hagadol. So we see by haras beis din hagadol, you only have to bring one. He doesn't say gerera. But Tizbara Tanakama Mani, who's this like? Ira Meir Haruba boy. He needs robe. Rabbi Huda Shar Shavatim Nami Mesi. Rabbi Huda says you wouldn't be 70. Everyone has to bring. All right, we say greira all the time, even with one shevet. So it's definitely not Rabbi Huda. Now Mani Rabbi Shimon Lezer, he, as we said, Kedasanya, like we mentioned before, that there's 6 shvatim but a rove population. So we don't have an answer what Rav Shimon's sheet is, even though we already know it. So Tashma v'chachamim armim l'oyim inu chayev el haras beis din hagadol. You're only chayev by the beis din hagadol. So man chachamim ilim Rav Meir Ruba boy. You need rov el olav. Rav Shimon says in order to be chayev, it has to come from the beis din hagadol shma mina. Okay, so How does that answer the question? So that shows you the question was a different question. Shevet echad shasim haras beis, right? So according to, again, no, it was the right question. According to Rav Shimon, the Beis Din Hagadol gives a psak. What is the din? So it's only by the Beis Din Hagadol, but only one shevet has to bring, and that's it. And of course, the other Beis Din, the Beis Din does as well, but that's only in the situation where it's a Beis Din Hagadol, right? In this situation, it says El Olav Rav Shimon he that Einu Chayiv El Al Haras Beis Din Hagadol. Shema Mina. Okay, let's see. Is there a Rashi on this? V'Katani Shevet Echad Chayiv Al Haras Beis Din Alma Ki Omer Shevet Echad Ikri Kahal. When does Rav Shimon say that one shevet is called a kahal? Afil Ki Chata Shevet Echad, even when one sins, Kimerubin Damu, Umavian Par Upar Beis Din. V'achas Vilu Rav Shimon Dehecha Deikaruba Begavri V'Ruba Shvatim Mavian L'chol Shevet. The only time everyone needs to bring, or like total 13, is when you have a rove. However, he disagrees with the shita that we said before of Rav Shimon ben Elazar that holds that all you need is either majority of shvatim or the majority population. No, in that situation, he would hold that a par would not be brought for everyone. Okay, all right, weiter. Shmamina. Rabbi Yehuda Rav Shimon Shevet Echad Ikri Kahal. Manolo. How do they know that one shevet alone brings a par? So Amri Dichsev V'Yalmo Yehoshaphat B'Kahal Yehuda. So the pasuk says in Divrei Hayamim that Yehoshaphat stood among the Kahal of Yehuda in Yerushalayim in the house of Hashem, L'ifnei Hechatzer Hachadash, in front of this new courtyard. So my Chadasha, what does it mean? It was new. So Rabbi Yochanan, Shechidshu Devarim. It means not that it was new, they didn't just build it, but it means that there was chidushim that were said in that area. The Amru, they said, Tvul Yoim Yichnesu B'machna Levia. Someone who's a Tvul Yoim, which means that you went to the you go to the mikveh, but you're waiting for Erev Shemesh, so that individual still cannot enter Machna Levia at that point. So that was the psak that was said over there. It's a little bit of a tangent over here, but that's what was said. So Maskav Ravacha Bar Yaakov B'mai Dilma Shani Yerushalayim Nami Binyamin. Right. So anyway, what do we see? That it says the whole point is that it says in the pasuk Kahal and Yehuda, which is mashma Yehuda, which is one shevet, is called a Kahal. So, well, maybe Yerushalayim is different because there's actually two tribes connected to it. There's also Shevet Binyamin. They shared into it. Says Rashi, Shnei Shvatim hu Dikari Kahal Avo Shevet Echad Lo. Maybe only two is the Kahal, but not one. Omer Rabach Bar Yaakov Dechsiv. The pasuk says, Yomer Eli, Yomer Elai Hini Mafrach Avi Bersich Unosati Ichel Kahal Amim Begaimer. This is by Yaakov Avinu speaking that I'll make you fruitful and great, referring to Yaakov, and as into a kahal, into this great nation. So man is Yolad Le Tahi Shaita Binyamin Shema Mina. Who was born? Only all of his other kids were born. So we say you're gonna have all these kids, and then only having Binyamin, right? So therefore, it must be that that's a raya. As the pasuk Rashi says, "V'yar Elokim El Yaakov Oid Bevot Padam Aram," and that's what he said. So the only one who was born, says Rashi, Man Habi Osin L'Il Misyalid, who wasn't going to be born, who's going to be born, who hasn't been born yet, only Binyamin. They're going to have another kahal, right? Which means that even one shevet is called a kahal. Why couldn't he mean he's talking about his kids? You're going to have another kid, which is going to be called a kahal because a shevet will come from him. Amalei Rav Shabal Rav Kahana Dilma Haki Karmeli Rachmana Lachim Isyali Binyamin. When you'll have your 12th child, Binyamin, then Hu Dahavi Yubei Shvatim Dimiskaris Kahal. Right now, you don't have a Kahal, but because you only have 11. Once you get to number 12, Binyamin will make it so it'll be a Kahal, but one itself is not. So it's not a Raya or Malay. Ella Shnei Masar Shvatim Ikri Kahal, Echad Asar Shvatim Lo Ikri Kahal. What do you mean? We know that Rove is called Kahal. We already established that. So you're going to tell me that 11 is not a Kahal? So of course 11 is a Kahal. So therefore it must be also that in this situation the din is that even 1 is a Kahal. Adkan.